As we read this story, let's remember to do the work that all readers of historical fiction do. You'll want to take out your notebook and refer to the chart Readers of Historical Fiction Ask. This story will be giving us our second window into the Vietnam War. So as we read, let's notice what we see about the war that strikes us. Remember, when you start a new historical fiction text, it's often a bit disorienting for a moment. You have to ask, who is this person and what's going on? Let's do that first. Then soon we'll be thinking about how the view from this window is both like and unlike the view from Patrol. Ambush by Tim O'Brien. When she was 9, my daughter Kathleen asked if I had ever killed anyone. She knew about the war. She knew I had been a soldier. "You keep writing these war stories," she said, "so I guess you must have killed somebody." It was a difficult moment, but I did what seemed right, which was to say, "Of course not," and then to take her onto my lap and hold her for a while. Some day, I hope she'll ask again. But here, I want to pretend she's a grown-up. I want to tell her exactly what happened, or what I remember happening. And then I want to say to her that as a little girl, she was absolutely right. This is why I keep writing war stories. He was a short, slender young man of about 20. I was afraid of him, afraid of something. And as he passed me on the trail, I threw a grenade that exploded at his feet and killed him. Whoa. I was definitely asking, who is this person? What's going on? Weren't you? And that question, where is this person in relation to the conflict? In this case, the war. Is this guy a soldier in the middle of the war? No, he's a soldier after the war. So this is a different window to the war. The story is being told by a soldier after the war is over. What were you struck by? It's a man who was a soldier. He fought in the war. He killed people. He killed a young man with a grenade. And this soldier doesn't want to talk about it, but he still remembers it, and it sounds like he writes about it all the time. Readers, this is a different window, isn't it? If we're making timelines of the personal story or of the historical story and thinking how those timelines are intertwined, this timeline begins many years after the war. Let's keep reading and see what we notice about how time unfolds. When she was 9, my daughter Kathleen asked if I had ever killed anyone. She knew about the war. She knew I'd been a soldier. "You keep writing these war stories," she said, "so I guess you must have killed somebody." It was a difficult moment, but I did what seemed right, which was to say, "Of course not," and then to take her onto my lap and hold her for a while. Someday, I hope she'll ask again. But here I want to pretend she's a grown-up. I want to tell her exactly what happened, or what I remember happening. And then I want to say to her that as a little girl, she was absolutely right. This is why I keep writing war stories. I'm struck by the way this story jumps around in time. I know that it is one of the challenges of historical fiction because many of these books do that. Are you wondering about whether this soldier, like our first soldier, might be sort of a pacifist? It seems like he isn't comfortable talking about the war even years later, right? Yet he also can't forget the war, so that's why he keeps writing about it. But what I'm wondering, and I bet you are too, is this. Was he that way back then while he was in the war? Was he tired of killing then when he threw that grenade? Was his view of the war similar to the view we were given in Patrol, or different? Let's read on. He was a short, slender man of about 20. I was afraid of him, afraid of something, and as he passed me on the trail, I threw a grenade that exploded at his feet and killed him. Or to go back, shortly after midnight, we moved into the ambush site outside Mai Kahi. The whole platoon was there, spread out in the dense brush along the trail, and for 5 hours nothing at all happened. We were working in two-man teams, one man on guard while the other slept, switching off every 2 hours. And I remember it was still dark when Kiowa shook me awake for the final watch. The night was foggy and hot. For the first few moments, I felt lost, not sure about directions. Groping for my helmet and weapon, I reached out and found 3 grenades and lined them up in front of me. The pins had already been straightened for quick throwing. And then, for maybe half an hour, I kneeled there and waited. Very gradually, in tiny slivers, dawn began to break through the fog, and from my position in the brush, I could see 10 or 15 meters up the trail. The mosquitoes were fierce. I remember slapping them, wondering if I should wake up Kiwa and ask for some repellent, then thinking it was a bad idea. Then, looking up and seeing the young man come out of the fog. He wore black clothing and rubber sandals and a gray ammunition belt. His shoulders were slightly stooped, his head cocked to the side as if listening for something. He seemed at ease. He carried his weapon in one hand, muzzle down, moving without any hurry up the center of the trail. There was no sound at all, none that I can remember. In a way, it seemed he was part of the morning fog, or my own imagination, but there was also the reality of what was happening in my stomach. I had already pulled the pin on the grenade. I had come up to a crouch. It was entirely automatic. I did not hate the young man. I did not see him as the enemy. I did not ponder issues of morality or politics or military duty. The grenade was to make him go away, just evaporate. And I leaned back and felt my mind go empty, and then felt it fill up again. I had already thrown the grenade before telling myself to throw it. The brush was thick, and I had to lob it high, not aiming. And I remember the grenade seeming to freeze above me for an instant, as if a camera had clicked. And I remember ducking down and holding my breath and seeing little wisps of fog rise from the earth. The grenade bounced once and rolled across the trail. I did not hear it, but there must have been a sound because the young man dropped his weapon and began to run. Just 2 or 3 quick steps. Then he hesitated, swiveling to his right, and he glanced down at the grenade and tried to cover his head, but never did. It occurred to me then that he was about to die. I wanted to warn him. The grenade made a popping noise, not soft, but not loud either, not what I'd expected. And there was a puff of dust and smoke, a small white puff, and the young man seemed to jerk upward as if pulled by invisible wires. He fell on his back. His rubber sandals had been blown off. He lay at the center of the trail, his right leg bent beneath him, his one eye shut, his other eye a huge star-shaped hole. For me, it was not a matter of live or die. I was in no real peril. Almost certainly, the young man would have passed by, and it will always be that way. Let's pause here, readers. Take a second to jot. Take out your reader's notebook, pause the video, and jot your thinking to this point. I'm thinking that he wanted to stop the grenade, but it was too late. He said that he wanted to warn the young man, and he was so afraid, just like the narrator in Patrol. He said he was terrified. He said he did not hate the young man. He didn't see him as the enemy, but he killed him almost before he decided to do it. He couldn't stop it. It is interesting because what strikes me is these aren't as much personal views of the Vietnam War as two views of the war. You could almost call these both portraits of the war. I know that you have been thinking about those things that readers of historical fiction are always thinking about. Will you think more about how this story gives you a view of this war that is like and unlike the view that Patrol gave us? Jot your thoughts in your reading notebook and then go back to the lesson platform for the next video in this lesson series.